earlier this week, or was it last week? It doesn't matter. I think it was earlier this week, but we talked about the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, which is actually not the far right-wing paper in the city. The far right-wing paper in the city is this other paper called the Tribune Review that actually may not be around anymore. I don't know. I'm not fluent in local media in Pittsburgh, but the Post-Gazette is the main newspaper of note in the city. And recently, they came under some scrutiny, and we covered this on the show, where they were censoring police brutality articles and censoring coverage of police brutality at the behest of the cop union. And, well, there's been a little backlash about it. Check this out. This was actually tweeted by my buddy Alex, another comedian buddy of mine. And here, the screenshot's a little small, so I'll read it to you. So this is from Giant Eagle. Now, if you're not familiar with Western Pennsylvania, you might not know what that is. Giant Eagle is basically, they have a near monopoly on the grocery stores in the Western Pennsylvania area. So what happened was, years ago, Kroger was just starting to form. And I'm sure that everybody watching this has heard of Kroger. And they split. Some of the people involved with forming the early Kroger, they split. And the agreement that was reached upon was that one party said to the other, hey, you can go wherever you want. You can spread throughout the country, do whatever you want, have your fun. Just don't come to Western Pennsylvania. And the other party said, okay, cool. I guess that other group really liked Western Pennsylvania, wanted to stay there. And the other group wanted to go all over the place. So that other group went on to become Kroger as we know it, and all the Kroger affiliates that we know as grocery store suppliers. And the other group went on to become Giant Eagle. And GetGo is kind of under that umbrella. And they have marketplace stores where they have nicer groceries. So it actually allowed a kind of near monopolization of groceries in the Western Pennsylvania area. As a result of that, groceries are kind of expensive. If you look at a cost of living index, you know, Western Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh, it's among the cheaper cities in the country. But if you look at the cost of living index, you know, how they'll have everything, like they'll have like rent and they'll have all these issues. You'll notice that food is like way higher than almost everything else. Like rent is cheap in Western Pennsylvania. Utilities are cheap. You know, getting a drink at a bar is cheap. You know, eating out is pretty cheap. Like it's a pretty affordable place. But then all of a sudden you'll see clothes are very cheap because they don't have the tax on clothes. So it's a good place. I mean, usually when I buy my clothes, I buy them there. Like I'll when I'm home for the holidays or something, I'll try to buy my clothes because it's cheaper there than in California. And but then you'll notice food is like way higher, and this is why. So that's what Giant Eagle is. So that just shows you how vast Giant Eagle is. Well, here's what they're doing. It is impossible to understand all the senseless deaths of African Americans, including George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and too many others whose stories have been pulled into the national spotlight, as well as countless victims whose stories go untold. We at Giant Eagle have taken the time to self-reflect on what we as individuals and as an organization must do to stand up against racism and social injustice. Words are important, but there are not nearly enough. The time for action is now. And at Giant Eagle, we began a series of efforts that we hope will allow us and others to support our African-American team members, guests, and neighbors. The company and the Giant Eagle Foundation have partnered to contribute $350,000 to support social justice causes. Now, here's what's interesting here. Additionally, all our Giant Eagle Market District and GetGo locations will be closed between 7 and 8 a.m. this Saturday, June 13th, so we can engage our team members. Wait, that's not the interesting part. Here's the most interesting part here. In Western Pennsylvania, we have also made the decision to halt sales of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. So in response to what happened with the Post-Gazette censoring stories about police brutality, Giant Eagle, which is basically they have a near monopoly on groceries, they're not selling the newspaper anymore. Kind of interesting. Now I know this is, this is only one action, but, it's interesting that when the media engages in deliberate, as Brett said earlier in the show, and I like this term, propaganda, there's actually a price to pay for it. Now, I know most newspapers are distributed online and it's online subscription, so having a physical stand probably only contributes to so many sales anyway. How much or how little, I don't know. But still, that's a significant thing where the biggest grocery store chain in the area is no longer carrying your newspaper because you decided to engage in propaganda. And there needs to be more consequences like this. So that's an interesting follow-up on something we talked about earlier in the week.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your